Ay, vi eso una vez. A ver. Hola, hola, hola. Ya debería estar en vivo.
¿Cómo?
Agar, ¿estás ahí?
Aquí estoy.
Espérate, no tengo Ya estamos en vivo. Oye, ¿cómo entraste? ¿Me oyes?
Sí, sí, te escucho bien.
Ah, no sé cómo entraste. No, nada, había programado para dentro de un par de minutos, pero ya no puedo esperar nada. Así que voy a ponerlo una vez. Ah, me sale publicidad de Last of Us. A ver, muchachos, para los que no saben, lo que vamos a hacer acá en este momento es que vamos a reaccionar a la segunda parte del documental de Rey Mona. ¿Cómo se llama? Los secretos de Saint Seiya, algo así. Que es tiene subtítulos, ¿no? Está en español, no sé por qué.
Sí, sí, tiene subtítulo.
A ver, espérate, no, sale el publicidad de Last of Us. No, acuérdate. Eso sí me va a salir, eso sí me va a salir. Ya lo vamos a poner desde el principio.
Threatens the Earth with destruction. Athena summons the mighty guardians of the cosmos to defend the planet from danger.
¿Está bien el volumen o lo subo más?
You can bring this Saturday morning action.
Agrandalo un poquito porque no se ven los subs.
Quinn, Jay.
¿Cómo?
Ponerlo en pantalla completa, ponelo porque no se ven los subtítulos.
Subtítulos en español en pantalla completa. Para mí.
Claro. No,
Ay,
ahí en el mismo que abriste acá en StreamYard puedes ponerlo en pantalla completa. No nos va a tapar a nosotros ni nada. Queda en pantalla completa.
¿Dónde lo pongo? ¿Dónde?
No, ahí mismo en el vídeo. Ponelo en pantalla completa que en el StreamYard para nosotros no nos va a tapar la pantalla.
Sí, pero a mí me va a tapar el chat y todo eso. ¿No?
No.
Si lo pongo en pantalla completa.
No.
¿Así?
Sí, ahí está.
Así está.
Max. When the mighty Apollo threatens the Earth with destruction, Athena summons the mighty guardians of the cosmos to defend the planet from danger.
Gente, en el chat, avisen si el volumen está bien.
Zack, Quinn,
¿Esos son nombres en realidad?
Max and Clint fight together as one, with Zack striking Apollo with his powerful Pegasus meteor punch.
Es el tráiler, ¿verdad?
The power of Max's nebula chain. Collect all 5 epic heroes. Who will save Earth?
Sí,
Guardians of the Cosmo dolls and accessories, each sold separately. Only from Bandai.
Ya, pero ese comercial es real porque
the last time you saw me, I was caught in a pretty bizarre moment of serendipity. I was sitting at the edge of my bed in awe of a new discovery I never in a million years could have expected. Just when I had given up hope on my investigation in finding the lost live-action Starstorm pilot, a new piece of media had emerged seemingly out of nowhere. Some months ago, I had been granted permission from Renaissance Atlantic CEO Frank Ward to withdraw any and all material from the Library of Congress that related to my previous investigation on Sailor Moon. And by some chance, assuming it was related to Sailor Moon based on its title, one of these files I had requested turned out to be a lost animated pilot of a completely different series. I unearthed a secondary, fully animated spin-off of Saint Seiya known as Guardians of the Cosmos, created in 1993, just a year before the revealed live-action Starstorm pilot. This finding raised so many new questions. I took this as a sign to not only keep searching for Starstorm, but to also investigate the full history of this recently discovered hidden gem, and learn exactly how both programs ended up being forgotten by the general public. Perhaps taking on this new adventure would lead to the complete full circle moment I've been yearning for, and the answers to one will undoubtedly connect me to the other. At this point, anything was possible. Exactly how many iterations of Saint Seiya did Renaissance Atlantic attempt before he threw in the towel? My mind was filled with so many what ifs, and I grew more eager about this project with every passing moment. I needed to know more. So that's exactly what I set out to do in today's piece. On tonight's episode of Tales of the Lost, I ventured deeper into this lost media labyrinth using this newly acquired video that landed in my lap. I was no longer just looking for the live-action Starstorm pilot, but I was now seeking answers behind the inception of another Americanized Saint Seiya concept titled Guardians of the Cosmos. What exactly made this series so different to its Japanese counterpart? What was the goal of these
mientras esta introducción, Agar, ¿el comercial al principio es real?
La verdad que no dijo nada ella, no sé si es real o no. Me quedan las dudas.
Porque me parece que en Twitter dijo que ella armó esos muñecos con sus Barbies. Creo. Porque son Barbies.
Wild goose chase, only to
no tiene sentido que van ahí viendo a Barbies.
Find out how the story unfolds in part
Creo que la joda lo hizo así ella basándose en los nombres que seguramente les han puesto en el piloto. Y sí, ya vi que el piloto está más adelante, porque adelanté un poco y vi que estaba, ¿no?
Sí. Tiene que estar el piloto porque ella misma lo puso en Twitter, aparte. Una parte del piloto, creo que.
Lo que me llama la atención es que el video dure tanto.
Es que va a ser todo el recorrido.
Nos saltamos el intro ya, porque eso es el intro que le ha puesto imágenes y todo eso, ¿está bien? ¿O no?
No, déjalo.
¿O lo dejo todo? ¿Lo dejo? Bueno. Como está por secciones.
Pero da igual,
este intro, la verdad es que...
Da igual, si el otro lo vimos entero, vemos este entero y ya está.
Ya, bueno. Oye, ¿no está Polux por ahí para que entre?
Le pasé el link, pero no me ha contestado todavía.
Ok, sí, me muero mientras le pasen a ver. Mucho relleno, dice en el chat. Sí, la verdad es que ritmo, o sea, el trabajo de edición es increíble, como lo dije en el anterior video, pero sí, tiende a meterle mucho relleno. Sobre todo para nosotros que somos muy impacientes. Sorry, ya, pero estoy cenando mientras veo. Capítulo 1, los Weird Guardians.
I was astounded to learn that Saint Seiya had undergone multiple attempts at Americanization prior to the release of its poorly received dub. And I know I'm not alone in this shock, as I had received many comments from viewers voicing their own confusion at the reveal of this secondary pilot, which premiered at the cliffhanger of our last episode. It's crazy to think of how much licensed material from Toei and Bandai were on the table to have possibly had their own adaptations. And even crazier to think of a universe where all of these ideas would have been given a green light for syndication. As I've said before, a change like this could have drastically altered the landscape of anime in North America and could have had the potential at shifting the timeline of when traditional Japanese anime had blown up into our mainstream market. But how does this recent discovery aid in our quest to understand Starstorm?
Pero te muteas cada vez que haya fiesta patronal en tu...
how comparable, if anything, it was
barrio,
to Guardians of the Cosmos from a less than 30-second trailer. I even wondered if at some point, like Saban Moon being an animated and live-action hybrid, maybe these two projects were once one. Nevertheless, I hoped that whatever new information I would learn about Guardians of the Cosmos would eventually aid in furthering my Starstorm investigation. I had so many hypotheses racing through my head, and with such a limited amount of evidence to go off of. Whatever the case was, I decided to put any inquiries regarding Starstorm on hold, as I now had something rather special sitting firmly in my lap. My focus would now be fixed on everything Guardians of the Cosmos related for the next couple of weeks. So there I sat in the midst of a new adventure, doing a deeper examination of the contents found inside of the mysterious envelope. I was surprised to discover that in addition to the CD containing the intro and pilot episode, a complete photocopy of the original VHS tape had been sent from the Library of Congress, along with a single page known as a description of contents that provided a brief synopsis of the lost episode. Guardians of the Cosmos, episode entitled Genesis. Separate description of contents. Episode for an animated television series in approximately 23 minutes running time. Copyright 1993 Renaissance Atlantic Entertainment. Film edited by Peter Greaves. Original theme by Dennis C. Brown and Maxine Sellers. Mystical martial arts heroes must battle the forces of evil. In the first episode entitled Genesis, the Guardians meet their mysterious benefactor Nova, who was paid for their special training. Nova, a beautiful woman, says she needs the Guardians to protect herself as well as the Earth. She explains that she is really Athena from Mount Olympus. Her brother Apollo plans on using his 12 golden warriors to destroy the world because he is displeased with what people have done to the Earth. Athena warns the Guardians that they can only succeed against Apollo's forces by working together. Apollo has, unknown to the Guardians, followed them to Nova/Athena's hiding place. Apollo immediately dispatches a single golden warrior who kidnaps Athena, bringing her back to Mount Olympus. The golden warriors follow, saving Athena and taking her back. Apollo vows to get revenge. Now, I won't get into the specifics,
O sea, no
as I
falló los
don't want
idiomas
to
de Aldebarán.
spoil the pilot episode in its entirety, but for the sake of my investigation, it's imperative that I
Decía
at
Santo
least
de Oro,
cover
¿no?
some of
Depende,
what
se
I
le
had
ocurrió que
seen.
puede ser
No,
Aldebarán.
pero parece que lo
After
puso
watching the
Aldebarán ahí.
pilot episode, I was pretty stunned at what I had witnessed. It was slightly different from the feeling I experienced when watching the Toon Maker Sailor Moon iteration. It was interesting that rather than being a hybrid animation like Saban Moon, they instead opted to do a complete reimagination of the Japanese anime, similar to Americanized cartoons like Darkstalkers, Street Fighter, and Super Mario. This was a somewhat popular trend
Literal,
in
lo
the
que
late
estaba diciendo,
80s
¿te
to
acuerdas?
early
Street
90s
Fighter.
as an attempt at making anime
Sonido
more
boom.
palpable for North American audiences. Though anime had already planted its roots firmly in US soil decades before, there was still a long-standing misconception that American children wouldn't respond well to the anime aesthetic, until of course this perception had been thwarted by the ever-present anime boom of the mid to late 90s. This Americanization of anime was a short-lived trend, as it proved to be more fruitful for distributors to just dub the anime outright. And to be completely honest, after sitting on it for some time, I didn't exactly hate what I saw. I know this might sound shocking, but if you manage to separate it from Saint Seiya and see it as its own unique series, I went into it expecting something of a much lesser quality and was pleasantly surprised at the level of direction and their attempt at making the show into something new. It was leaps ahead of previous Renaissance-led Latin projects animation-wise, and while the scripts could have used a bit of polishing, the writing was on the same level as some of your typical Saturday morning cartoons of the 80s. If you showed me this as a child, chances were I probably would have enjoyed it as a series. And even more of a controversial statement, but I think if I had to pick between growing up with Guardians of the Cosmos versus the original Deke dub of Knights of the Zodiac, I probably would have picked the former. Yeah. Crazy, right? It overall felt like the production team had attempted to take the concept of Saint Seiya and package it into a formula that worked better for a younger demographic, whereas the Knights of the Zodiac dub was unfortunately nothing more than a sad butchering of a much more complex and beloved series. What they did here with the resources they were given was actually pretty impressive. So how was it that they did such a better job than the subsequent dubs, and why was it that the pilot never made it to light? Before I could move forward, I needed to have all of my facts about the series lined up. If I wanted to gain more insight on the origins of the pilot, it was integral that this series First and foremost, I wanted to give myself a generous amount of time to assess the pilot episode and see if I could spot anything from recognizable voice actors to familiar cast and crew, as that information would be the most crucial in getting any further intel on Guardians of the Cosmos. Also, I thought it would be necessary to outline the key differences in this adaptation that made it diverge so much from the original series. If I could highlight where the similarities end, I might be able to reuse this information for my investigation on Starstorm. Sort of how early concepts in Saban Moon were recycled back into the Deke dub of Sailor Moon, it was entirely within the realms of possibility that whatever unique ideas that were used in Guardians of the Cosmos could have potentially been reused for the live-action Starstorm pilot that came out a year later. So I sat at my desk, set the video on repeat, and plunged headfirst into my deep dive analysis.
¿Cómo me sigue spoileando? Pegasus, Zack y compañía. Zack se llamaba Seiya.
Zack.
That night, I spent a few hours watching the pilot episode over and over, taking notes as I went along. I managed to jot down some key pieces of information that stood out, facts that warranted their own analysis, and details that, if investigated, could possibly lead me to learning more about the inner workings behind Guardians of the Cosmos. Firstly, I wanted to take a moment to analyze the theme song itself. As mentioned previously, I noted that the theme song had a catchy and upbeat 80s feel to it, somewhat reminiscent of a jingle you'd hear on Saturday morning cartoons like Captain Planet or G.I. Joe. As it turns out, the tune had been made by American film and television composer Dennis C. Brown and musical artist Maxine Sellers. Dennis C. Brown's work, more notably, was widely recognized in other children's television programming, and he's credited for composing the iconic soundtrack to the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated TV series. Diving a little deeper into the episode itself, I noticed elements in the story and plot of Guardians of the Cosmos that differ greatly from the series
el piloto si lo va a mostrar después.
Like I had mentioned in the pilot outline, there was a bit of an odd environmentalist motif present in the series. The Guardians of the Cosmos are sworn to protect their benefactor Nova, the reincarnation of the goddess Athena, from the evil forces of her brother Apollo and his 12 golden warriors sent to destroy the Earth. Apollo's motive to destroy the Earth is, simply put, because he hates what the humans have done with it. He makes it his mission to destroy humanity as we know it. Contrasting to the anime, in Saint Seiya, there's still 5 main bronze saints who protect Sayori, the reincarnation of the Greek goddess Athena, except her battle is against Hades and the Olympian gods. More specifically, in the first arc, the main villain is Pope Ares, an evil gold saint who seeks to overthrow Athena and successfully manages to trick the silver saints and gold saints into believing that Sayori is not Athena's true reincarnation and therefore must be destroyed. While more of a minute detail, I noticed in this version the Guardians are all strangers to one another. However, in Saint Seiya, the Bronze Saints had all grown up with one another before being separated at a young age to begin their specialized training. It's apparent that in this Americanized version, none of these characters share any history, and that the characters meant to represent Shun and Iki are apparently no longer related. In addition to this complete story revision, we also see the reappearance of familiar characters from the anime, now with completely different names, personalities, and even special abilities. Going down the list of Bronze Saints, Dragon Shiryu is now known as Clint. In the pilot, we're introduced to Clint training on the Great Wall under the guidance of his master, Libra Dodo. While his name was not revealed in the Americanized version, visually the character is almost identical to his anime with the exception of him now having a normal skin tone. Clint's special ability in this series is the Rising Dragon. Andromeda Shun is now known as Max. Shun trained at Andromeda Island in Saint Seiya, but we can't tell who he was sent for his training in Guardians of the Cosmos. All we know is that Max is introduced to his audience.
El Max mamado de
Andromeda. The master he trains with is also nameless, and his special ability is called Chain of Andromeda. Phoenix Iki is now known as Queen. His character is introduced in a metropolitan area. He can be seen stopping a woman and her child from being mugged. His master is also
Bueno, esa imagen hay que pasársela a cierto personaje.
Training in Russia with an unknown master. His special attack is called Diamond Dust. The last of the Bronze Saints and our main protagonist, Pegasus Seiya, is now the hero known as Zack. He appears to be training in the ruins of Greece with evil who goes unnamed in this Western pilot. That special ability is the Pegasus Meteor. Sayori also appears in the pilot as the character Nova, and consistent with the anime, she is also the reincarnation of the goddess Athena. She is also aided by her butler, Tokumaru Tatsumi, though his name is never mentioned in the American adaptation. In this version, Nova's mansion holds a secret portal to Mount Olympus. Apollo, the main antagonist and brother to Athena, looks nothing like his counterpart in the Japanese anime. Aside from the obvious physical differences, not much is known about his character, but we do know that Taurus Aldebaran, one of the strongest gold saints, acts as his right-hand henchman.
Se llama Ram. O sea, acá vendría a ser como una versión de Desmas, porque es más cercano al...
While I couldn't quite pin down each voice actor at the top of my head, I was undoubtedly sure that Jim Cummings had provided the voice work for Iki, Taurus, and Tatsumi.
Look, if it's not too much trouble, we'd kind of like to know why.
No, ya tendrías que haber sido un niño en Estados Unidos para conocer la voz.
You'll find what you're looking for.
And if my guess is correct, Apollo himself might have been voiced by legendary actor and voiceover artist Tim Curry.
Bring my little sister back here.
Tim Curry was a very prolific voice actor of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
Sería demasiado para una serie, de este nivel.
Pero en esa época.
Sí, por la época sí, pero era un actor bastante conocido.
It's hard to tell if this was the actual actor or if a voiceover artist was doing voice matching. In either case, Apollo's voice had been the most familiar to me among the group, and if I wanted to know exactly whose face was behind each character, I was gonna have to find a way to dig deeper. There had been so few articles on the works of Renaissance Atlantic, and even less coverage on the CEO Frank Ward. Even still, whispers of lost anime adaptations like Starstorm and Saban Moon echoed through retro anime communities everywhere. With the likes of Jim Cummings and Tim Curry possibly attached to this project, how was it that word of this adaptation never came to light? wait, what was the true story behind this Guardians of the Cosmos pilot? These questions made me suddenly remember the Anime Land interview with Saint Seiya's creator, Masami Kuramada. He had mentioned viewing the pilot for Starstorm, but I wonder if he'd also been shown this early cartoon and what his thoughts were surrounding its inception. I felt like there was so much more here that needed to be unpacked. Luckily, unlike Starstorm and Saban Moon, the Guardians of the Cosmos pilot did have some saving grace. I was shocked to learn that the pilot had come complete with a full list of production credits that were displayed at the end of the episode. A list of over 44 different names that had a hand at the show's creation. With my new knowledge of the show's composers, possible actors involved, and a full production list, perhaps moving along in this investigation would be much easier than I initially thought. Listed amongst the animators, artists, and producers was the name of the studio house responsible for the episode in question.
Activada la opción de Piropera Muriel en el chat, por favor.
Had been produced by a studio under the name Fred Wolf Films. Oh, that actually explains a lot, but also doesn't.
Mientras toma su leche.
No, es agua.
Ah, porque es blanca. Ya, no me distraigas.
Bueno, pues ya apago mi cámara, pues.
No, déjame ahí para que te piropen.
No,
para que te piropen.
Me voy,
ya me
voy.
Aguas fiestas.
Films was behind the creation of this pilot episode left me with more questions than answers. I felt I had to get to the bottom of this. But before I could fully deconstruct these leads, it's imperative that we're all on the same page about Fred Wolf Films. It's important you're aware of exactly what Fred Wolf Films is and why this company is such a unique player in this investigation. This company was well known and highly regarded in the animation industry in the 80s, which makes the rejection of this lost pilot all the more intriguing. So if you have a moment, sit tight while I provide a brief history for further context. Frederick Wolf, also known by Fred Wolf, was an Academy Award-winning animator born on September 13, 1932 in Brooklyn, New York, USA. Throughout his career in the animation industry, Wolf produced and was involved in the creation of various well-known animated series such as Alvin and the Chipmunks, DuckTales, and the Flintstones.
Todas las series de esa época se parecían,
Wolf founded the animation studio Fred Wolf Films in Hollywood, California, with the help of Jimmy T. Murakami and later with Charles Swenson when they became a full partner in 1978.
¿Conoces alguno de ellos, Oscar?
Murakami, born June 5th, 1933,
no, la verdad que no me suena.
Academy Award nominated animator and film director, best known for his work on When the Wind Blows and The Snowman. Charles Swenson, born March 28, 1941, was an American animator, writer, producer, and director who worked in the industry for many years before joining Wolf. Fred Wolf Films worked with a number of companies and television networks, including the Walt Disney Company, Warner Brothers Studios, MGM, CBS, and ABC. The studio produced The Point, the first U.S. animated special to air on primetime television on ABC in 1971. They went on to produce an array of animated series such as Free to Be, You and Me, the Puff the Magic Dragon specials, Toxic Crusaders, James Bond Jr., and Sarah Ferguson's Budgie the Little Helicopter. Funnily enough, in 1993, the studio was also working on The New Adventures of Speed Racer, which was an Americanized version of the Japanese Speed Racer anime. With them having some experience at Americanizing anime properties in 1993, it's no wonder they went on to work with Renaissance Guardians of the Cosmos.
¿No serán esos los otros caballeros de bronce?
Contrast to Toon Makers, for example, shines through their quality of animation on the pilot episode alone. Among the many television series they worked on, perhaps the most well-known series Fred Wolf Films was responsible for producing was the hit 1987 animated series Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This was the characters' first appearance outside of their comics and helped launch the characters into mainstream popularity, becoming one of the most popular animated series in television history. Action figures, breakfast cereals, plush toys, and other merchandise featuring the characters appeared on the market during the late 1980s and early 1990s and became top sellers worldwide. By 1990, the series was shown daily on 5 television stations. This makes it all the more surprising that even with all these extra efforts from a studio that was responsible for one of the most successful animated franchises of the 80s, still wasn't enough to bring Guardians of the Cosmos to life. This only left me with more questions and had me wondering what could have been if Guardians of the Cosmos had been released and ultimately reached the same level of success and cultural staying power as that of the Ninja Turtles. If things had rolled out differently, would it have been possible for the series to reach a level of popularity that hadn't been seen with the failed 2003 Deke dub? I was hoping that now, with a full list of employees, many of these questions would soon be laid to rest.
Habrá hielo, habrá fuego.
There will be ice, there will be fire.
Now that we've managed to run down of the importance of Red Wolf films, I could finally start mapping out exactly what needed to be investigated, list all of my clues and contacts, and ultimately what I'll be hoping to find. This was my comprehensive list on all of the avenues that needed to be explored. First, there's no better way to get an answer than by going to the direct source. I'm going to attempt to reach out to and hopefully hear something back from Fred Wolf himself, and if possible, see if I can find any contact information on Jimmy Murakami or even Charles Swenson. With them being at the forefront of the company and having overseen the workflow of these animated projects, perhaps one of them would have some recollections of their partnership with Frank Ward and Renaissance Atlantic. Next, I plan to look more closely into the production team of Fred Wolf Films. I'd go through the long list of 40-something names, attempting to contact everyone from the production assistants, painters, producers, musicians, film editors, and storyboard artists. A lot of names that were listed were somewhat unfamiliar to me, but I hoped, if anything, someone would be willing to sit down
Se
for an
puso a estoquear a cada una de las personas.
some memories of
Eso
their
me
time
recuerda
working
bien.
at the studio. Lastly, it's worth identifying voice actors that worked on this pilot episode. While I was able to identify Jim Cummings as having an involvement in the series, I was still very much on the
Estoy
fence
seguro que no
about
se
my
acuerda
guess
que
that
trabajó ahí.
Apollo was voiced by Tim Curry. Hopefully, if I was able to successfully link the right voiceover artists to their respective characters, maybe I'd be able to reach out to the cast and see if they remembered working on this canceled pilot. While sounding familiar, all of the voices would be impossible to pin down without some extra help, and thankfully, I knew exactly the person to turn to in order to learn more about the remaining faces behind these characters. If all my efforts in this investigation fell flat on its head, at least people would still be able to witness Guardians of the Cosmos in all of its glory. But being able to get a hold of someone
No puedo con
would
las
make
tomas de
for
la
a
que salía
serious
pensando, es como que
breakthrough in learning more
grábame
about
así,
what sort
como
of
que estoy
treatment
pensando.
Renaissance Atlantic had up their sleeve. And lucky for me, with all of the newfound leads to sort through, I felt I had a higher chance of potentially uncovering more secrets that had been hidden away from public eye. I was eager to venture further down this rabbit hole and was hopeful that someone on this list would be able to shed more light on this mystery. It was now time to dive into my thorough investigation on Guardians of the Cosmos.
Guardians of the Cosmos.
Estos capítulos son más cortos.
Sí.
¿no? ¿Cuánto ha pasado?
Ahora está más resumido ahora. Uy,
Pero
casi
igual
va casi.
estaba casi la
My
mitad, vamos.
investigation,
Casi.
attempting to find the contact
Bueno,
info
un
of
tercio.
Fred Wolf and the former co-owners of the company, Jimmy Murakami and Charles Swenson. Unfortunately, Charles was well in his 80s and had much less of a digital footprint than Jimmy Murakami, and Jimmy had sadly February of 2014. That only left the, as of writing this, 90-year-old Fred Wolf, the original and current owner of the animation studio. I figured having already led such a long life in the industry, the likelihood of making contact with him would be quite slim. But oddly enough, upon doing a quick Google search, I came to discover that the Fred Wolf Films official website was still up and running. Though the website was still live, it seemed as though it hadn't been updated in some time. Even so, the main page displayed both a working phone number, fax number, and email address. I decided to first send over an email, and then realized it might be more efficient to just call their studio outright. The line was surprisingly still in service, but I was immediately directed straight to their voicemail and never actually had the chance to speak with anyone. I'd called a few different times, all with the same outcome, and eventually I gave up. As long as they had my number on file and my email had gone through to the right people, I was satisfied enough with my attempts to move on to my next point of interest. Luckily, there was still a massive list of names I could sift through that could potentially take me further down my search. I made sure to all of the names that had appeared.
Si esta cosa se concretara y se estrenara hoy en día, Geek You fingiría emoción y gusto, así como en el live action actual.
Ese men es tan egocéntrico que no puede concebir la idea de que alguien piense diferente a él. A mí sí me emociona, man. Lo siento, pero no es el centro del universo, man. No todos piensan como tú. Existe la posibilidad de que a alguien le guste algo que a ti no te gusta.
I had to keep in mind that Fred Wolf Films was a close-knit family of animators and creatives, and that with the company having been founded so long ago, it was likely that many of the artists who worked on the production team were all now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. In fact, a lot of the names I had investigated barely turned up any searches. After hours of research, out of the 44 names, I was only able to uncover the contact information of 8 individuals. Producer Walt Cubic, Billy Wolf, associate producer Andy Lucky, storyboard artist Dan Fawcett, prop designer Richard Ori, post-production supervisor Elliot Darrow, and production assistant Fred Salinas. While I waited to hear back from people on the production side of the project, I thought I'd begin my search on identifying the remaining voice actors that appeared in the Lost pilot episode. Had I been accurate in my assumption that it was Tim Curry and Jim Cummings behind some of these characters? From listening to the pilot episode a few times, it was more than likely that Jim had actually voiced Tatsumi, Ram, and Quinn, but I still couldn't be sure of Tim Curry's involvement. If I was going to uncover the remaining characters, I needed to consult someone who had arguably much more knowledge on the subject.
Ojalá confirme que Tim Curry trabajó en el... Porque sería loquísimo que Tim Curry haya trabajado en algo de Sensei.
That same night, I wound up reaching out to Canadian content creator Phelan Porteous. Phelan has a review channel where he covers an array of topics from television media to movies to action figures, primarily focused on the early 80s and late 90s. Phelan's work had fallen onto my radar some years back as he was well known for his popular review series where he'd often cover bad bootleg Disney-esque films and bargain bin type children's movies. More specifically, reviews on animated features from studios like Good Times Entertainment, Golden Films, and Dingo Pictures. With his broad scope of 80s and 90s knowledge, I figured he'd probably be able to identify a lot more voices than I could upon listening to the pilot himself. And just as I had hoped, he was able to give more insight on the possible identities of the main voices, as well as
¡Deja de spoiler el piloto, coño!
After sending him the audio, Phelan had this to say.
I can take a listen and see if I can pick out any of the voices for you. I'm not 100% on these, but Athena/Nova sounds like it could be Mona Marshall, and Seiya might be Corey Burton. It's bugging me too, because I know I've heard the voice of Shiro in something before, but it's not clicking who it is.
Eso solo lo pueden distinguir la gente de Estados Unidos que ha visto series.
All the Jim Cummings ones you have labeled are him for sure, though. I can usually pick his voice out. Oh, I'm pretty sure Shiro is Frank Welker. Oh, and yeah.
Sí, lo conozco. Frank Welker trabajó en Transformers.
No problem. You know, like the ones I am speaking currently.
After convening with Phelan, I compared the voices to the actors in question, and sure enough, he had been right about Frank Welker and Corey Burton.
Sí,
I can see why a beautiful girl like you would want protection.
That's obvious, because it's a sweet ride.
Ah, es Fred.
I get the feeling our chick Judo needs a little more work.
He mentioned the possibility of Nova being voiced by actress Mona Marshall, but after re-listening to the pilot, I'm more inclined to believe that it might instead be the late voice actress Mary Kay Bergman.
I'm not going to be able to step on this one.
You won't be laughing when Apollo begins his destruction.
Bergman and Mona actually share some career crossover, as she was the original voice of the character Sheila Brovlovsky in South Park, until she had sadly ended her life November of 1999, where the role was then passed down to Mona Marshall. There's also a strong possibility that Nova could in fact be voiced by Renee Jacobs, the original voice of April O'Neil in the 1987 Ninja Turtles series.
April O'Neil.
3 scientific equipment companies.
La verdadera pelirroja.
No sorprende que esas sean las voces, la verdad. Con
Since
esa
much of
época
the
los
cast had also
usaban
previously
mucho.
worked on the Ninja Turtles series, I looked through a handful of episodes and tried my best to match up the remaining voices, and as it turns out, from what I could hear, there's also a chance that actor Sam Clark, the voice of Leonardo, may have voiced Max in the pilot episode.
Now, April, would you like to tell us why those men were chasing you around the sewers?
You guys better drop my duffel bag before I drop you in.
A su madre.
Ah, madre, esa voz.
A su madre.
Y si sabemos que es Max mamado, es.
Max
No me lo
mamado.
imagino diciendo Nisa.
I will miss you, but I won't miss living in this
Con esa voz quedaría súper grosso.
Das Vidania.
Antonio.
Sadly, the days were passing with no forward movement, and I was starting to accept the fact
Lo
that
dijo,
this
dijo la
wasn't going to
frase.
be a
Como en el
long time.
canon.
It felt a little disappointing to
Dijo
have
la
spent
frase.
such a long
Dijo,
list of
Santa
names
Cachucha dijo la frase.
showing
Dijo la
progress.
frase.
There was no word from any of the
Das
supporting
Vidania.
voice actors, and nothing from the long list of Fred Wolf employees. I was pretty much ready to end the investigation here and post the pilot in full. It seemed that I wasn't going to get any closer to figuring out the origins of this unknown piece of lost media. And right as I was ready to wrap things up, I received a response from one of the contacts I had reached out to. I got an email from the associate producer, Andy Lucky.
A ver.
A ver. Encontrando refugio. Afortunado, afortunado. Eres tan afortunado.
Of the few names I was able to find contact information on, only
Los
one person
personajes de los Guardianes del Cosmos tienen el rostro del meme de Calamardo guapo.
By some sheer luck, out of the 44 names, the only person I successfully came into contact with was someone by the name of Andy Lucky. Andy Lucky, born October 7th, 1965, was an American animator, artist, and television producer. From 1989 to 1992, Lucky worked as a producer for Fred Wolf Films at both their studios in Burbank, California and Dublin, Ireland. During his time in the industry, he produced over 300 hours of programming and has most been recognized as being a popular producer of the 1980s animated series Teenage Turtles, a show in
Vas a
which
tener
he
que hacer
earned
un
5
ending para tu canal,
nominations
César, con
for.
esa
Lucky also
despedida.
has a brief involvement in the video game industry as director and executive producer for Sir Richard Branson's Virgin Interactive, president and chief operating officer of Pure Interactive Entertainment, and as executive producer for the Crislin Company. His most popular work during this period was on the heavily praised and iconic video game version of Walt Disney's Aladdin, co-produced by Walt Disney Feature Animation and Virgin Interactive.
Ese que salió para Sega.
I had very little faith I would actually hear back from him. I was already feeling very defeated that my efforts hadn't led me very far, and so much time had gone by in between. Just as I was in the process of wrapping up my entire investigation, Andy had sent this response.
Grábame como si estuviera pensando.
I'll have to give you some thought as to if I remember enough to be of use to you. Perhaps we can chat later in the week as I'm a bit busy today.
Okay.
All the best, Andy.
Upon reading his email, I could hardly contain my excitement. I had been sitting in the dark for so long, and initially had very high hopes for this contact list I managed to uncover, but felt so let down once I had come to the realization that many of the 44 names were virtually inaccessible. Perhaps Andy was the lucky one of the bunch, and maybe he would hold the keys to learning more about Guardians of the Cosmos.
No lo leas, quiero escuchar,
o sea, léelo en tu cabeza. All I could really do was hope for the best, sit back and wait patiently.
Gracias por su Francisco Dandy.
Would Andy be the missing link? Or would my month-long search finally hit the end of the road?
Ya no se mueve.
Before we can continue, I'd just like to take a moment to express my gratitude for all of your continued support on this ongoing series. Tales of the Lost
Entonces ese men es el hombre clave que le ha revelado todo.
It's basically my baby and my main passion project. I get so much enjoyment out of making cinematic pieces on some of my favorite bits of nostalgic lost media, and being able to investigate and share my findings has brought a new sense of joy to my life. All I want to do right now is make entertaining content and produce my own series, and the reception to Tales of the Lost has been everything I could have asked for. And I'd love to continue doing this series for a very long time. But unfortunately, this passion project can come at a bit of a cost. This episode in particular was actually really expensive to make, and sadly, I was unable to find a sponsor for today's video.
Va a poner un
to
patrocinador.
keep this series alive, just liking this video, commenting, and subscribing will help to push the video.
Terminando voy a poner el link en la descripción, solo que como
the process of making an episode of
puro
Tales
no
of
lo
the
puse.
Lost is usually quite lengthy, where I spend almost 2 months investigating
Maldito Premier.
another month dedicated to
Va a
writing,
ser una promoción,
filming,
creo.
and editing
Por eso
the
está haciendo
whole
una
video.
introducción.
So with no
Creo.
content being published in that time in between uploads, I lose my ranking in the YouTube algorithm, and by the time
Eso
I
es verdad.
post a new video, I decrease
Tienes que
my
publicar
chances
seguido,
of
si no te
discovery
cagas.
by being away for so long. And your support could really go a long way in helping to keep this channel afloat, because with more likes and shares, the more the video will gain
O va a
visibility, which
mencionar un
can in
patrocinador
turn
o va a
draw
anunciar
in
su
more and
Patreon o algo
better
así.
sponsors. And if you'd like to take it a step further and support me
Creo que
monetarily,
su
there are
Patreon.
few ways you can do that, whether it be tipping as a one-time payment,
super
through
gracias.
super thanks once the video goes live, through my coffee,
Yo le voy a dejar un
and
super
even
gracias
through
terminando.
Patreon. Donating as little as
O será su
$1
OnlyFan, así César puede seguirlo.
No lo quería decir, fue Ágara.
other behind-the-scenes people.
Machista.
¿quién lo va a seguir?
Machista.
César.
Machista. Abran leílo, abran leílo.
If we got $2,000 a month, that would be $2,000 that would help go towards better equipment, research, Library of Congress documents, subtitles,
No,
and
le voy a-
other necessary fees
le
that
voy a
go
dejar
into
bien su
making these
superchat, se lo
hour-long
merece.
deep dives.
Además, estoy
And
creando
that amount
contenido a
of
través de ahí.
support would honestly be life-changing. Thank you for following me on this journey, and thank you so much for your continued love and support. This series means a lot to me, and I want to continue making high-quality and
Ese
entertaining
comercial es
episodes that
falso,
people can
¿cierto?
really sit back
Sí,
with
es
and
falso.
enjoy. With that
Ella lo
being said,
hizo.
thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of
Y
this
no sé, le pidió a alguien que lo
Digamos que-
narre en base a los nombres que sacó, ¿no?
Claro, para mí lo armó como si hubiera sido,
Claro.
si la serie se hubiera estrenado
Como
en
esa
un
época,
canal de
claro.
televisión.
Su madre el show. Ah, ya vino Mati. Hola, Mati.
I was so eager to hear exactly what
El
Andy
Midcloud
had to
Experience.
share about his time working on Guardians of the Cosmos. Out of all the investigating I had done, he had been the only person to have reached out, and my feelings of anxiety were skyrocketing at the possibility of him being able to provide more information on this pilot's existence. But that anticipation was short-lived, and those feelings very quickly came to a screeching halt. I did wind up hearing back from Andy, but it wasn't quite the response I had expected. Some days later, I woke up to find a singular, straight-to-the-point message sitting in my inbox.
Hi, Ray. I've reflected a bit on the series you mentioned. While I have vague memories of discussions on the show,
Ricardo, si vas a spoilear, no empieces diciendo los voy a spoilear porque ya la iba a dejar seguir leyendo.
Thanks nonetheless for your inquiry, Andy.
I couldn't believe
Se lavó las manos, no quiso hablar el hombre.
No, qué cabrón.
In the first place, and to no fault of his own, if he honestly had foggy memories and couldn't remember enough, then there wasn't much I could really do.
Pensé que le iba a hacer
and as part of
la
the pill
carta.
It was to swallow that my investigation had led me to a dead end. I could at least call it in knowing that I had made some attempt at making sense of this estranged piece of media that found its way out of the Library of Congress archives. At least I could throw in the towel, knowing that I gave it my all. With all of the attempts made to localize Saint Seiya for North American English-speaking audiences, it never quite had that same staying power and profound impact as it did in both Japan and Spanish-speaking countries. Truly, its impact was much larger than that and actually reached a global scale and managed to target most parts of the world, aside from the one country with arguably the largest economy in the world and the biggest chokehold on mainstream pop culture. In many ways, our country failed you, Saint Seiya, and you never quite received that recognition here that you so sorely deserved. But I wonder if that could have all changed, if Renaissance Atlantic had truly capitalized on the trickle-down success of the Ninja Turtles, and were given the okay to release their Americanized incarnation of the Japanese anime. It was actually a pretty solid
Ricardo, después de haberte dicho que no pongas que vas a spoilear el inicio de tu duración, ¿crees que voy a leer otro mensaje tuyo?
¿Cuál es? Ricardo. Ah, no, solo estaba diciendo huevadas.
They had been working on at the time. It's very perplexing
no está
to think
diciendo
about
nada de verdad,
opportunities and to assume that in some alternate universe, Guardians of
No
the
sé, pero
Cosmos
si intento spoilear no voy a volver a leer su mensaje.
No está spoileando nada.
Geek dubs of Saint Seiya. And ultimately, I'd like to know if I'm alone in scratching my head about this. So there's one last thing that I need to do. I'm gonna let you guys judge for yourselves, as I'm curious to what your thoughts are on this pilot.
¿Ya viene el piloto?
Perhaps sharing this video will bring forth some unanswered questions of my own, and maybe with the help of viewers, we can finally identify the remaining voice cast and put my concerns to rest on whether or not Apollo is in fact voiced by Tim Curry. I really hope you found some entertainment in my excavation onto this subject. And although I wasn't able to get all the answers I was hoping, perhaps like last time, something else will spring forth and surprise me when I least expect it. But until then, please enjoy the full pilot episode.
Voy a poner pausa porque vamos a grabar una pequeña intro, ¿ya? Porque eso lo voy a grabar aparte y lo voy a subir.
Okay, ahí.
A ver. Una pequeña intro rápido. Hola amigos, ¿qué tal están? Sean bienvenidos a un nuevo video de su canal favorito, Kick You. Mi nombre es César, administrador del canal de la página de Señor. Y en este momento estoy con Asgard y con el pato soviético, o sea, Muriel, que así se llama en realidad. Y vamos a reaccionar en este momento al piloto, por fin, de Guardians of the Cosmos. Si recuerdan, hace como 4 meses, y Raymona presentó el intro de este episodio perdido y cancelado que se hizo en Estados Unidos de Saint Seiya, incluso antes del piloto live action. Así que lo vamos a reaccionar en este momento, ya que Raymona lo acaba de liberar. En este momento estamos en vivo reaccionando todo el documental. En mi canal tengo la reacción completa a este documental en la pestaña de transmisiones en vivo. Y pues este va a ser un fragmento que estamos sacando de allí, ya que lo vamos a reaccionar ahora. Le voy a dar play en 3, 2, 1. Ay. Me voy a reír mucho. Ok, dice la intro para nada. A ver, supongo que viene, ¿eh? Ahí viene.
Sí, ahí viene.
¡Cállate! ¿Cuánto durará? ¿Media hora? Espero que dure como un capítulo.
Revisa minutos. Primero. 23 minutos.
Qué buenísimo. Esto
va
a estar buenísimo. ¡Qué emoción! Vamos a hacer un capítulo perdido de Saint Seiya. No puedo creerlo, es un momento histórico. Falta Porus para que diga los guardianes del cosmos. Ese intro ya lo tenemos que reaccionar. ¿Quién más está emocionado? ¿Quién más está emocionado?
Yo.
Ay, no puedo creer que vamos a reaccionar a un capítulo perdido de Seiya.
Oh, Dios. Guardian.
No, ya acaso lo ha spoileado, ¿no, Muriel?
No.
Ya, más te vale.
Y...
Okay, un castillo.
¿Qué?
Un castillo. No,
es
China.
Ahora
es China.
¿Shiryu? No, Clint.
Clint. Ah, no, perdón. Cierto, Clint.
Long le queda mejor.
Sí.
No, no veas que se muere Doko.
No.
Rising Dragon.
Creo que ya debería.
Las piernas mamadas de Doko, ¿eh?
A su madre.
¿Qué? El maestro de esto le dijo.
¿Y Shun dónde demonios está? Digo, Max, ¿dónde demonios está?
Ese parece ser un templo indio, me parece.
Sí. A su madre.
Está bien mamado. Max, el mamado de Andrómeda.
Max, el mamado de Andrómeda.
Max mamado. ¿Por quién es Seiya? ¿Yune?
Creo que sí. ¿O es su maestra? Creo que es su maestra.
No sé. Ahí va a salir Iki salvando a esa pareja, ¿no?
No.
Sí,
Queen es Queen. Es Queen.
Unos punk ochenteros.
Sí, unos punk ochenteros. Me recuerdan a los de Robocop.
Sí.
Ah, su madre.
Sin camisa y entre el fuego.
Puño de fuego. Bien.
¿Dijo Fist of Fire?
Sí, Fist of Fire, dijo.
Fist of Fire, sí.
Qué mala mano. Y qué malvado, que más mi mano.
Y se va corriendo con la mano.
Se va así, con la mano.
Quemaduras de grado 5.
Todos saludos así de...
Guilty, what the fuck. El Jorgito.
Jorge.
El Jorgito.
¿Por qué todos hacen así y suena un chino?
Mira.
El pato.
Jake.
Pero ese que está ahí con él es.
¿Quién está con él? ¿Cristal?
¿Es el amigo de yoga?
¿Es Jacob?
¿Jacob mamado también? ¿Jacob mamado?
Le tiró el poco de diamante al oso, qué hijo de puta.
No, mirá ese.
Jacob
mamado es ese. No lo nombran, pero para mí es Jacob mamado ese. Estoy seguro.
Ahí está.
Porque esta es una stripper para mí, más que Marín.
Está con el pelo largo. Estaba con otro peinado en ese momento. Está con otro peinado, ¿lo vieron?
Sí,
está con un peinado como si fuera Oko, más largo. Carajo. Ok. Le hice una estatua.
Bueno, sabemos que a Seiya le gusta a Marín en esta
serie. Villano típico de los 80, que por alguna razón tiene una cámara que observa todo lo que pasa, ¿no? Ay, qué risa. Ah, Nova se habría pagado. Le mandó su billete de primera clase, su pasaje de primera clase.
Jun está un poquito oscura. Vamos hoy. Vamos hoy.
When I'm face to face with this Mr. Nova dude, I'm gonna tell him
Mr. Nova dude.
Mr. Nova dude.
Not those who want to help. You've been given a great gift. Use it wisely.
Oye, este
¿lo llaman Guilty o ella ha puesto Guilty en sus títulos?
No sé si se llama Guilty, no lo nombran.
Jakes, mira. Ah, no, Jakes es él.
Le dice maestro, pero para mí es Jacob este.
Claro. Das Vidania.
I wish you could come with me. My skills will be in your hands, my love in your heart.
¿Qué?
¿Son pareja? Oh, ¡qué terrible! Aquí sí rompieron todo.
Esa frase que rima.
No sé qué decir en este momento.
Es como Munra que miraba en su caldero.
Sí.
Hasta miraba a Chitara durmiendo, ¿te acuerdas? O sea, por alguna razón podía ver todo. Y aún así fallaba.
Excuse me, I believe this is mine. Nice try, geek. Go scam someone else's luggage.
Friki. Le dijo a Seiya.
¿No? Le dijo,
¿Qué me está hablando?
You guys better drop my duffel bag before I drop you.
A su madre.
Mamado.
la cadena de me la tiró Shiryu, ¿por qué?
Sí, le robó la cadena. ¿Qué pasa acá?
Era la cadena de punta.
Sí.
Todos tienen la misma maleta, estúpidos.
Ahí están sus maletas, imbéciles.
No tuvieron una pista al ver que están vestidos iguales.
Ahí se pasan la ropa los salames.
¿En serio? Ah, este es tuyo, ok. ¿Qué estúpido chiste?
No, they've all been trained by the same benefactor. But why? The sooner we find Mr. Nova, the sooner we'll find out.
Mr. Nova. Todos piensan que es hombre. Esa ciudad futurista, ese taxi. No Transformers.
Parece la versión de Speed Racer que era en el futuro que habían hecho los americanos.
Aquí están preguntando.
Es un chiste, pues.
Están preguntando por qué Shun y Geek aquí no son hermanos. Pues no sé.
Porque Max está muy mamado, por eso no puede ser hermano de... Sí, tiene un aire a la ciudad que habían hecho en el Speed Racer, la futurista.
What the fuck, ese bichi.
Ah, eso. Ese taxi, pobre taxi. Ahora sí tiene la cadena.
Ahora recuperó lo suyo.
O todos tienen cadenas.
No. Le habían robado la cadena a Max.
Sí. Y todos se paran así, ¿no?
Entonces.
Porque son superhéroes, papá.
Get lost.
Son chistes, ¿ves? Okay, comerciales, ¿no? ¿Cómo? Sí. No me da que termina ahí. Comerciales.
No, ya
es el momento de los comerciales. Mierda,
oye, mira, pero si yo no supiera que es una adaptación de Seiya, yo creo que si hubiera estado desde niño, lo hubiera visto, ¿eh? Llama un poco la atención al menos, ¿no? De que se están juntando un grupo de guerreros. Lo hubiera visto, ¿eh? Esa llave. Esa llave.
Es un peleador de MMA.
What the fuck?
Es un peleador de MMA. La versión de Shiryu.
That was cool, dijo Max. Por el hielo. ¿Qué dijiste? That was cool. Todos cayeron en ¿qué? ¿El cambio de basura?
Sí.
Se pide los dientes entre comidas. ¿Qué carajo? ¿Por qué esos chistes?
Este punk. Este friki punk.
Meteor of Pegasus. ¿Qué? Hizo un giro de la piedra.
No, ¿y eso? ¿Qué es eso?
Una sonda que hace las ondas infernales.
¿Qué verdad?
¿Tiene poderes telequinéticos Seiya?
Al parecer.
¡Carajo! Él lo mandó el papá, Apolo.
Apolo, really.
Mandó a esos punks.
Este vendría a ser Apolo Creed. Apolo Creed.
Ay, este capítulo, ven.
No, Shun no es tan alto. Digo, Max no está tan alto.
Looking for Mr. Nova? Just go inside. You will find what you're looking for.
Ojos verdes.
Esta vendría a ser la mansión.
Supongo.
No puedes dejar de intentar hacer chistes a cada rato.
No. Les da ansiedad si no hacen chistes cada 5 minutos.
Es Marvel, cosa.
Lo que pasa es que el capítulo de esto invita a hacer chiste incluso también a nosotros.
Uy, los flecha todos, ¿ah?
Uy.
Hasta Shun.
Epa, aquí Shun es interesante.
If it's not too much trouble, we'd kind of like to know why.
Please sit down and I'll explain.
Y que no sé, se le ve medio suavecito, ¿eh?
Sí, demasiado.
I had you trained so that you could protect me.
Okay.
Ahora sí
Shiro, qué galán, Shiro está piropeando.
One of you would be enough. But I also need you to protect the Earth.
What's the matter, babe? Superman quit on you? How dare you speak to Athena like that?
¿Qué pasa, nena? ¿Superman renunció?
Eso se lo tienen que haber pagado de ese, ¿eh? Si salía esto le tienen que pagar.
¿Y por qué cayó un meteorito?
No sé.
Hoy no puedo con sus chistes, ¿ah? Lo que dijo la CIA, no puedo con sus chistes, ¿verdad?
Están diciendo Superman renunció.
Se metió al fuego. ¿Por qué esos chistes? ¿Por qué esos chistes? A ver si no es problema para Iki, ¿eh?
Vengan, dice.
Ay, Dios.
That is Mount Olympus, and those are the castles that defend the fortress of my brother Apollo. My brother is enraged at the people of Earth for ruining the planet.
¿Los santos de oro protegen Olimpo?
Parece.
Ah, su plan es destruir un edificio y hacer un huaico, como le decimos acá en mi país.
Doing it is that I'm still here, and that's why he wants to take me back to Olympus.
De risa en su cara.
Qué buenos santos de bronce, papá.
Los objects.
Ahí están los clots, ahí están los clots.
Ay, qué risa. Le dijo, mira que se perdieron. Le cerró la puerta. Ay, qué risa.
Come on, let's go. Hold it, guys.
Ay,
All we
Dios,
have
no.
plane tickets to Canberra. Where will we go?
Pero que no lo crean que está un poco más pegado al manga, porque así es el manga que no le creen y se van.
Sí.
Pero no se cagan de risa en su cara. Uy, Seiya se quedó.
Uy.
Bueno, eso sí es diferente, porque Seiya era... Uy,
Uy.
¿qué? Oye, ¿qué te pegas mucho, ah?
¿Qué?
Uy.
Uy.
Seiya va a traicionar a Marin. Epa.
Uy, uy, uy.
Uy, no.
Cuidado.
Uy.
Ya quiere poner cuernos.
Está buena la telenovela aquí.
I'll have to start all over again.
Oh, pobrecito.
No.
Porque patata. La está viendo dormir como Chitara Munra.
Demonios.
O sea que vio cuando se sacó la ropa también.
Sí, también.
Cochino.
Aldebarán. Ram. Como ordenas de transportación, como la CSG ella. Él lo hicieron primero.
Sí.
Está cayendo como un meteoro.
Ay, Dios.
Aldebarán sacó la mierda ahorita. ¿O qué? ¿Ese disparo?
¿Tiene espada láser o pistola láser? ¿Qué tiene este hombre?
Super salto.
Ah, ahora entiendo por qué todos estaban sin camisa, estaban durmiendo.
Robocop, mierda.
Parece.
Y estaba durmiendo con su traje de entrenamiento.
Y este
con la cadena.
Este duerme en el piso. Es pobre. Esta versión de Shiro es pobre. Muy pobre.
I heard a scream. Yeah, it came from the girls' room.
¿La habitación de la chica?
Sí.
La habitación de la chica.
Humanos, ¿qué tal?
¡Qué grande!
Chain of Andromeda.
No, don't take him out alone. Only together can he...
A su madre. ¿Eh?
Ahí le empieza a pegar patadas. A la mierda. Chau, un mamado.
No.
Lo tiró por la ventana, Shubama.
Ese girito.
El girito.
Digo, Jake.
Vamos a calmarnos, ¿ves?
Vamos a calmarnos. Uy, no.
Los chistes, ¿no? Deja una huella de su...
Adiós. Al pato.
No, patito, no.
Chau, Shiryu.
Pero dijo, eso me pone más hotter, dijo. Ay, qué risa. Los chistes que hace todo el tiempo. ¿Se los absorbió?
Sí.
¿En serio?
Ahora viene la patada, la patada mítica.
Es
la patada mítica.
Ok.
I think so.
Ese fue el meteoro que al final fue patada. ¿O qué?
¿Qué?
Patada, puñete en la cara, patada en la cara. Ahora se lo saca Seiya de una patada. Venga, fuera de aquí.
Esa patada. Y se fue volando con Superman.
LOL.
Ay, no creo que termine, man.
No, yo tampoco me quiero ir cagando de risa.
I must be dreaming.
No, I'm projecting my thoughts.
Ah, le pusieron cadena.
Encadenada.
Sí, qué rápido.
For my own sake, but for the Earth.
But where are you, Nova? Oh, fine. Now he's talking to himself. Yeah.
Me da la sensación que esta versión de Iki consume algún alucinógeno.
Sí, de hecho.
No lo puede escuchar y piensa que está loco.
How did we get to Olympus? Nova? Nova? Oh, she's gone. I didn't know she was here. She's in trouble. Apollo has her on Mount Olympus. We've got to get her.
We got to get her.
Excuse me? This is too weird, man. I'm out of here. Trust me.
Oh, ese no es para nada, Iki. Y no se me perdona que estén tan desnudos y están tan cerca de pegados.
Sí, eso fue muy raro.
Well, I can. But there isn't much time.
Tatsumi le da las armaduras.
Vamos, Tatsumi, reparte la merca. Libera la merca, Tatsumi.
Libéralo.
O sea, ellos no entrenaron para ganar sus armaduras en sus lugares de entrenamiento.
No, se las tenían que dar entonces.
Directly to Mount Olympus.
Let's go.
Wait.
Espera, las armaduras.
Olympus is filled with deadly threats.
Hey, let's take the special armor Athena showed us.
Su madre.
That's too bad.
No están.
If Apollo is as powerful as they say, it would have come in handy against him.
If your hearts and minds are clear and of a single goal, you will have all the help you need.
¿Que las armaduras se les van a aparecer?
Al
Parece.
parecer.
Puede ser.
La 12 casas. Versión Olimpo.
Morfosis, amigos, dicen.
Made it. Great. Now it's gonna grow. I can feel the life force. That way, come on.
You young mortals are brave, but foolish.
Don't judge them too quickly, Apollo. Or you're
Me recuerda la película Iris.
Yes, we'll see how well they do, little sister.
Little sister.
Face to face with what I've got waiting.
How will we get across? No problem. I'll just freeze it and we can walk.
¿Qué es eso? ¿La hidra?
Una hidra. Una hidra, sí.
No.
Una hidra de agua.
No.
Lo comieron.
No.
¡Aguanta!
No.
Oh, Shiryu no debería tener problemas con eso. Otra vez. Lo demás, otra vez el loco hablando solo.
El loco hablando solo.
¿Qué está haciendo? Shumamado. ¿En serio? ¿Atrapó agua?
I told you they wouldn't have a chance. Their puny powers are no match for mine.
A ver, no me digas que lo van a montar.
Al parecer.
Ah, no.
Ah, no, lo...
¿Cómo salieron? ¿De dónde se agarraron?
¿Que
la cadena los impulsó?
Sí, parece que la cadena tiene vida propia.
Ok, ahora se convirtió en un gigante. ¿Un cíclope?
Sí, un cíclope.
Diamond Dust.
Stop.
I can defrost anything you can freeze.
Not if we can help it.
Esa patada de karate.
Patada al estilo Bruce Lee.
Me faltó el ¡Wotan! Necesitamos un poco de calor. Las bolitas de...
Las bolitas de fuego de...
Los caballeros de oro solamente está de verdad.
Todos los están de verdad.
Ram. Primer templo. Dime que sale.
Tendría que ser el de Aries, pero parece que Aldebarán nomás es el único que va a ir a pelear.
Sí. ¿No? O Kuisamu no estaba tampoco.
Pero aparece entre los 12. En la imagen
sí,
aparece
sí,
entre los 12.
Sí, sí, sí. Ahí está la del opening. F, Shiryu.
No.
De verdad va muy en consonancia con el live action también, ¿no? Se parece mucho esta escena, solamente con Dead Max. ¿En serio? ¿Qué están haciendo al pobre Max?
Pobre Max.
Not a chance. ¿Y las armaduras para cuándo? Ahí aparecen, ¿no?
Ahí sí.
Ahí vienen las armaduras.
Uno, el opening les está dando poderes.
Sí.
No.
Ahí viene.
El opening. Pegasas. ¿Cómo se llama? Zack, ¿no? Pegasas Zack. Él era
Jake.
Jake, ¿no? Jake.
Max,
Andrómeda.
el mamado.
Andrómeda Max.
Clint, el
Queen.
Fénix. No,
Dragón,
Clint,
Clint.
Sí. Así es.
Puta madre.
Contra Ram de Tauro.
Ram de
Tauro. Se le fue el guante.
No, que no tiene.
Por el amor de Dios.
What the fuck?
No puede tener clichés de eso.
Se te fue la señal.
Hizo un cameo Zeus entonces.
Sí. No puedo creer que esta serie haya llegado a la saga del cielo antes que Kuruma. Está en el Olimpo peleando.
Parece eso, hasta hizo un cameo Zeus directo.
La saga del cielo. ¿O estamos viendo la saga del cielo?
Uy, mira cómo fue el vídeo.
Es la televisión, ¿no? De nuestra época, Ángel. La televisión de antena. Tendrás que pegarle.
They fought as individuals instead of together. I defeated them one by one. I have a message for Athena from the one called Zack. With his dying.
¿En serio?
Sent his regrets, did he? No.
La va a liberar, ¿verdad?
¿Qué?
Le robó la armadura de Tauro. O
¿Y
sea,
así lo
el
engañó?
Pegaso se puso la armadura de
¿En serio?
Tauro.
¿Y así lo engañó?
O sea, el Pegaso se puso la armadura de Tauro. O sea, no la de Zack.
Nosotros
Necesito esa imagen.
No puedo creer que lo haya engañado así.
O sea, le robó el clot a Tauro, viejo.
¿Y la cara cómo le hizo?
Well, we'll be ready for him. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that we would be honored, Nova, to be your guardians of the cosmos.
Close still can, but you won't be laughing when my golden warriors return for
No se atraparé, aunque sea una
Flañeras ante mi poder, Atena.
Ahí están nosotros. Le cerró la cortina.
Y así termina el capítulo.
Puta madre.
No, quiero más.
Ay, sí quiero más. Yo lo hubiera visto.
Quiero más. Al menos como parodia, está bueno.
No puede ser.
Mira, si lo terminan como parodia, sí, está bueno.
Oh, sí, está para las risas, está muy bueno.
Está muy bueno.
Ahí termina el documental. No, falta más, ¿no?
No, falta.
Lo voy a pausar para hacer unos comentarios y después terminamos de ver el documental. Y ahí termina. Le pongo pause para hacer unos comentarios antes de terminar de ver el documental de Ribona. Oye, cómo me he reído, qué buena. Pero yo no sé si yo como fuera niño y no hubiera visto nunca Sin Seiya original, no hubiera reído así, evidentemente, ¿no? No sé si me hubiera llegado a traer todo, pero al menos hubiera llamado mi atención, creo yo. ¿Tú qué opinas, Edgar, que también eras niño de los 80 como yo?
A ver,
ni había nacido.
Yo voy a opinar sobre todo lo que veo comparándolo con las series de esa época.
Claro.
A mí me da la sensación que a pesar de compartir épocas, por ejemplo, con las Tortugas Ninjas,
era
inferior, es muy
inferior.
Sí, es muy inferior.
Es muy inferior.
Yo noto que es muy inferior, porque a pesar de que esas series, tanto las Tortugas Ninja como Transformers y demás, tenían sus problemas, evidentemente, hoy uno lo ve y sabe que tienen muchos problemas, para mí tenían más calidad que esta serie.
No, sí, Tortugas Ninja ahorita yo la veo y me encanta, sí, la antigua igual.
No digo que no, yo digo que tiene sus problemas. Tiene sus problemas de animación.
Pero me refiero que esto sí definitivamente tiene menos calidad. No me refiero solamente a cómo lo han animado y todo, sino o sea, la trama, los chistes forzados, no sé. Es una calidad muy inferior y no me sorprende que no le hayan aprobado para que siga, la verdad.
Es que para mí, es una opinión mía, esto no lo sé, pero para mí ni siquiera se lo deben haber aprobado la propia Toei y Bandai. De haber visto eso y dijeron, no, directamente.
Sí, qué carajo. Me pregunto si Kurumada lo habrá visto, supongo que sí, ¿no?
Yo creo que sí, pero para mí lo que le bajaron el dedo son la propia Bandai y la propia Toei. Vieron eso y dijeron, no.
Todos le bajaron el dedo, creo. Uy, pero yo no sé cómo sigue. Nunca voy a saber cómo sigue. Pero al menos no nos dejaron con un cliffhanger de que no rescataron a Saori. La verdad me sorprendió. No pensé que iban a rescatar a Saori en el primer capítulo.
Yo pensé que no íbamos a llegar nunca a eso.
Repaso de nombres. Era Zack de Pegaso.
Sí.
Era Jake de Cisne.
Sí.
Clint de Dragón.
Max
Queen de
Andrómeda.
Fénix y Max de Andrómeda.
Y después estaba Ram de Tauro.
No era Atena, Ram de Tauro y el Papa era Apolo, que no era el Papa en realidad.
Apolo.
Era Apolo, literalmente Apolo. Con la experiencia del Papa.
Aunque a Marín sí le hicieron el nombre.
Pero no.
Sí.
No,
a los otros no le dan los nombres.
No, creo que los subtítulos salían, pero era porque lo pusieron ellos. Marín creo que...
No.
Que era
no dijo su nombre entonces.
No, Tatsumi tampoco, ni Guilty. Ese Guilty.
Tampoco.
Mira, ahí dice Alex, ahora llamaremos a Asgard Ram de Tauro.
Pero yo voy a buscar la captura, porque ¿quién tiene ahora ¿quién se puso el clot de Tauro? El propio Pegaso, papá.
Sí.
El protagonista se puso el clot de Tauro.
Es oficial.
¿Ahora qué dicen?
No canónico, oficial. Pero es oficial, porque este es oficial, es un piloto oficial. Se hizo con permisos. Es oficial, man. Tienes que ponerte ese avatar, ¿ah? Uy, qué buena. Qué buena, uy, qué buena. Para las risas estaba increíble, ¿verdad? Qué buen día ha sido este.
Uy, sí.
Me ha gustado para las risas, ¿no? Pero, como digo, si no hubiera visto Seiya nunca y fuera un niño, me hubiera llamado la atención, supongo que lo hubiera seguido viendo, pero definitivamente tiene menos calidad que las series que veíamos en esa época, ¿no?
Sí,
los Thundercats, mira, y compara con los Thundercats, no hay forma.
Sí, los Thundercats, los halcones galácticos, las tortugas ninja, Transformer, todas esas eran superiores en todo.
Sí. Me dio risa lo de Apolo, que tenía su pantalla tipo Munra. La verdad es que dije, ¿no? Literal, cuando miraba a Chita dormir, y justo pasó lo mismo. Saori estaba durmiendo. Es que era típico, ¿no? Había un montón de dibujos así, que el villano, por alguna razón, bueno, al menos acá era como algo místico, ¿no? Pero es que había otros villanos de otras series que ahorita no me acuerdo, pero era lo típico, que tenían una especie de monitor donde tenían cámaras en todos lados y podían ver lo que hacían los buenos, por alguna razón. Sí. Pero al menos acá es algo místico.
algo como Munra, porque Munra veía a través de su caldero, vería...
Sí. Eso se entendía más, porque era un poder de Munra, ¿no? Y aún así perdía, es lo que llama la atención, porque podía observar sus planes y todo siempre. Pero bueno. Pero no supero que haya estado golpeándola para que enfoque como los televisores de nuestra época, ¿no? ¿No bajar?
Lo detuvo.
Mover la antena, que lo detuvo.
Claro, pero al detuvo no le pegabas a la pantalla, le pegabas arriba.
Claro, le pegabas arriba,
la parte de atrás.
No, funcione. Puta.
Dice, Shun mamado me devolvió la heterosexualidad, dice.
Tu mamá. Oye, y todos girándose a Saori, ¿no? Shiryu, bueno, Clint, girando a Saori. Seiya o Sake, que estaba siendo infiel a Marin.
A Marin sí, como que...
no supero ese capítulo. La tengo que ver otra vez. De verdad, qué buena ha sido esto. Y bueno, acá termina la videoreacción que está grabada. Nosotros vamos a seguir haciendo la transmisión en vivo, pero la gente que nos está viendo acá en YouTube, ya saben, dejen su like, compartan y todo eso. Vamos a cortar acá la transmisión. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Taxpidania, como diría Jake de Cisne. Bye.
Bye.
Ya, listo, acá corto. Y seguimos entonces reaccionando al documental de Raimona y luego lo comentamos. A ver qué dice. Ya queda poco. ¿Qué va a decir? A ver. El 93, mira.
Ajá, copyright de 1993.
Tormenta estelar revive. Ah, Starzone. Ay, no me digas que nos va a mostrar el piloto de Starzone.
Yo te dije, cuidado, mira si consigue algo de eso.
In my investigation, I still managed to come out with a small handful of new finds. Identifying some of the voiceover artists and learning about how Guardians of the Cosmos differed from Saint Seiya was still enough information to be put towards learning more about the secondary filled Renaissance Atlantic spin-off, Starstorm. That door was still somewhat open, and when my investigation into Fred Wolf and Guardians of the Cosmos concluded, I couldn't help but think I still needed to push deeper. I wanted to keep chasing Starstorm, and after learning about the animated pilot that had been made just a year before, I was convinced that the two were related. I still held on to the theory that perhaps some of the changes that were added to Guardians of the Cosmos were also recycled into Starstorm.
Va a haber una tercera parte con el piloto completo de Starstorm.
Y ahí
todos morimos.
Para morir en paz.
This wouldn't be a huge stretch, especially considering that Deke went on to produce the first English dub of Saint Seiya in 2003. These thoughts continued to linger in my head, and eventually my mind wandered back to my correspondence with Frank Ford, the person responsible for all of this. When I had unknowingly withdrawn the Guardians of the Cosmos pilot, the contents of the envelope had contained a separate sheet with a complete story summary of the series, listing a few names of some individuals involved in the project. I knew the Starstorm tape had also been deposited to the archives, and just like Guardians of the Cosmos, there was a high chance that the tape would come with some sort of written description about the pilot, which could also reveal even more leads that have yet to be explored. The Starstorm submission had to have had its own separate description of contents. So if I could get in touch with Frank Ward, I could potentially be killing two birds with one stone, get the true origin story behind Guardians of the Cosmos, and gain access to the remaining files on Starstorm hidden inside the Library of Congress. My only interactions with Frank Ward up until that point was through the help of a third party. When I drafted up our contract, we both had to sign our names along with our contact information, and still being in possession of our contracts, I figured, what harm would there be in reaching out? There had been a lot of dead air between us since crossing paths. I wasn't even sure if he'd seen the Saban Moon documentary and wondered what sort of reaction he'd have knowing I stumbled upon another new find. With Frank Ward being an older and reclusive figure, there was a strong chance that I wouldn't hear back from him at all. But if there was a chance of potentially solving this mystery for good and attaining the full Starstorm pilot once and for all, I was willing to reach out and wait as long as it took to get a response. And if you'd like to know whether or not this persistence truly paid off,
Parte 3.
you're just gonna have to wait until the next
Sabía
episode.
Yo creo que sí lo encontró, ¿ah?
Sí.
Uy, qué buena parte 3 se viene, ¿ah?
Para mí sí. Para mí algo encontró. No sé si el capítulo completo o algo encontró.
Claro, algo más encontrado. O igual nos va a contar cómo fue su búsqueda y la descripción que encontró. Yo creo que la descripción puede haber encontrado, ¿ah? Porque como que trató de tirarla por ahí, ¿no? Debe haber un papel. No, creo que ha encontrado la descripción o el resumen del primer capítulo. Debe haber encontrado.
¿Quién sabe? Y tal vez a través de eso tiene acceso, como te decía yo, a alguno de los actores que le faltaba, como el de Seiya, por ejemplo.
Claro.
Cuidado.
Oye, está bueno, ¿eh? Está buenardo esto. Le voy a dar su like. Vayan comentando, voy a ponerla en la descripción de este video, el video original, para que la gente vaya. Y en el primer comentario también. Vayan, ¿qué les pareció? Vayan opinando.
A ver, como estábamos hablando, en cuanto a la investigación de la chica, debo decir que demostró tanto en la anterior parte como en esta, de que hizo un muy buen trabajo, más allá de que uno pueda hacer algún chiste.
Sí, o sea, la verdad, yo no le he faltado respeto en ningún momento. Yo solamente he dicho, me da risa, o sea, es que yo no soy pro de las miniaturas actuadas, que a veces tengo que hacer. Yo mismo me doy cringe a mí mismo diciendo, tengo que poner cara de sorprendido. Entonces, como que eso no me gusta hacer. Y por eso que hago el chiste. Pero yo no le falta respeto. Es un trabajazo lo que he hecho. Y es increíble para la comunidad de Seiya.
Y después, con respecto a lo de la serie misma, al capítulo del piloto es como lo que hablábamos. A ver, es claramente hijo de su tiempo, pero a pesar de eso, como estábamos hablando con César, estaba muy por debajo de las series contemporáneas. Yo no sé qué hubiera pasado si la serie hubiera tenido luz verde, hubiera llegado a ser emitida. La verdad que no lo sé. Pero evidentemente yo entiendo por qué tal vez Bandai y Toei vieron esto y dijeron no.
Nel, perro. Nel.
Supongo que tiene que haber pasado. Supongo que tiene que haber pasado lo mismo con la de Sailor Moon también, porque a Sailor Moon, Toei y Bandai ven eso y deben haber dicho no. O sea,
no.
No, pásalo
bajo ningún punto de vista, porque para ellos es arriesgar la imagen de un producto. O sea.
Claro, gracias, pero no gracias. Ay, qué buenardo.
Estuvo muy buena tu intención, pero no.
Sí. Ya está, ya lo puse en la descripción del video. Y... ok, nos ponemos en pantalla completa ya para ir terminando, ¿no? ¿Qué más podemos decir? Porque no hay mucho más, creo, ¿no? Sí, ahorita le voy a hacer su superchat a Raimona. Vayan al link que está en la descripción. Actualicen la página, evidentemente, para que les aparezca. Van al link, ahí está el video, denle su like. Y si pueden, darle un super gracias, porque de verdad, la chica esta, como dice, no va a ganar casi nada con eso, porque su canal no es tan activo y YouTube no la va a recomendar así. Compártanlo. Compartan el documental completo. Denle like. Y si pueden, dejen un super gracias. ¿Cierto, muchachos?
Sí.
Así es. Hay que apoyar el esfuerzo porque, como estamos diciendo, más allá de lo que uno diga para reírse de algunas situaciones, el esfuerzo de esta chica vale la pena porque ha logrado destrabar cuestiones y materiales desde Estados Unidos de Seiya en aquella época. Previo, hay que decir, y hay que aclararle para la gente que se fue sumando, esto es previo incluso a lo que hizo Dick con Seiya cuando se estrenó en el año 2003. Estamos hablando de hasta 10 años antes. 10 años antes.
Sí, de verdad que, o sea, es entendible con el boom que fue Seiya que hayan tratado de adaptarlo al Estados Unidos. Lamentablemente, los creativos no fueron muy... ¿Cómo decirlo, amables?
¿Quién sabe cómo fue la relación? Porque esto es algo que uno no va a saber. No sé si siquiera si ella lo va a poder averiguar o si este hombre le pudiera contar. ¿Cómo fue la relación con Toei Bandai? Porque a través de esta serie o de la propia live action, que espero que encuentre algo esta chica, podría estar la respuesta de por qué Seiya se tardó tanto en llegar a Estados Unidos. Porque es mucha la diferencia con el resto de nuestro continente, incluso. Ni siquiera hablo de Europa, de nuestro continente. Nuestros países, la mayoría llegó en el año 95, 94, 96. Y Estados Unidos llegó en el año 2003. Son muchos años de diferencia. ¿Quién sabe si la razón de que esto haya sucedido no haya sido a partir de una relación entre Toei, Bandai y estas empresas americanas?
Sí, de verdad que eso va a estar muy interesante. No puedo esperar a ver su siguiente, la siguiente parte de su documental. Más bien, se me pasó el tiempo rápido, no sé, pero el documental, la primera parte fue el año pasado. Yo lo tenía bien reciente, pero es que ha pasado
claro que fue hace 4 meses. Fue hace 4 meses.
O sea, de acá no vamos a tener que esperar hasta otros 4 meses, seguramente.
Probablemente.
Pero ya hemos visto, valió la pena, de verdad, totalmente esto.
Sí.
Yo de acá voy a cortar el video, el capítulo también lo voy a poner en Facebook y la reacción me ha gustado muchísimo, de verdad. Qué bueno que hicimos esto juntos, la verdad, porque solo no iba a ser lo mismo. Qué risas, de verdad. Qué pena que no estuvo Pollux acá. ¿Lo habrá visto Pollux ya?
Y la verdad que no sé, yo le mandé el link, pero él me dijo que estaba con una cuestión en la familia y no sabía si iba a poder estar.
Pollux, Julián, Carlos. O sea, si lo van a háblales, pues, si lo van a reaccionar, que nos avisen, pues, que no lo vean todavía para verlo juntos.
Sí, no sé
a Pollux, Carlos, Julián, porque sería muy divertido, ¿verdad? Para ver sus reacciones de ellos. Ay, Dios mío. Bueno, lo dejamos acá, pues, entonces, muchachos. Sí. Gracias por ver, gracias por estar. Y que se despida cada uno. Agar, tú.
Bueno, muchas gracias, César. Como bien dijo César, denle un like a la chica. Apóyenla si pueden también con alguna cuestión monetaria, con un super gracias. También a los canales, el de César, por supuesto, al de Universo Seiya. Todos los que puedan apoyar, dar su like y compartir, siempre serán bienvenidos. Así que, bueno, nos reencontraremos con más Seiya, que se viene ahora el Next Dimension la semana que viene. Y César sabe que a pesar de su yo te cuento y su traducción, el viernes a la noche, bien entrada la noche, tenemos debate.
Uy.
Mañana hay la previa, porque hay spoiler de los lunes. Todos los lunes siempre hay spoiler de Next Dimension, antes de que salga el capítulo los jueves, miércoles para nosotros. El lunes siempre la previa, en vivo, temprano mañana. Muriel.
Sí. Bueno, pues
gracias, Muriel. Entonces,
pues gracias por la invitación y la verdad es que me la pasé bien, no espero reírme tanto como... Ay, pero bueno, por lo menos este piloto quedó como la anécdota.
Sirvió para los jajas. No, ha sido un momento histórico. Ha sido un momento histórico esto, de verdad.
Sí, la verdad.
Y nada, pues ya. Nos vemos entonces en otra oportunidad, otra transmisión, otro video, lo que sea. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Den like, todo eso. Dax Britannia.